Hello guys, it's Nick and welcome back to my channel and another video. Today I have such an interesting one, guys. I'm going to talk about misconceptions that foreigners have about India. Yes, this one is just staring me in the face every day. I keep seeing it, discussions like this online, and understandably in a lot of cases, like, it can be very frustrating for Indians for such a large portion of the world to have these ideas about India that aren't always true or aren't always to what the extent that they are portrayed in media, online, social media, all of that stuff. And I think it's becoming worse. I think with Instagram especially, I definitely don't use Instagram that much these days, but when I have came across different reels about India or someone's in India, and you can see in the comment section what's going on, and what's really going on is, for so long there's been this perception about India or Indians or generally the culture, Indian culture, and there's just been these labels like stamped to the country. And it's the same, I guess, for every country. Every country does get labels. It's normal. If you are from another part of the world, you perceive certain things because you've never been there, you don't know, you are just believing what you're being told or what you've seen or what you know of, which is largely from media sources. I absolutely love having these kinds of discussions and conversations. It's so fascinating to me, and I've also learnt, because I love India, I've learned through the people around me, whether it be friends, family, acquaintances, colleagues, like, you see their judgments, they come out and you see, oh, okay, that's what people think. So as a foreigner, I feel like I can give good insight into what the misconceptions are. And I'm also just making this video because I feel the frustration on behalf of Indians. These misconceptions, they're not all what they seem, and it's kind of like based on certain things, pigeonholing like a country of billion people into that one cup, and that just is kind of crazy when you think about it. So I'm really excited to discuss all this stuff, and do start a discussion in the comments. If anything you want to say, tell me. Also, I have a bit of a cold at the moment, so apologies if my voice is a bit nasally. But we're gonna do it, and yeah, I hope you enjoy this video. Okay, so the very first misconception is a general one, and it is that people perceive India basically like it's just one country, one culture. It is one country, sorry, obviously. No, I'm starting again, sorry. So the very first one is that people here perceive India to be one culture, Indian culture. When you think of Indian culture, it's like one whole thing, and again, witness this from talking with people in my life, and they don't know how diverse India is, how different from north to the south, how different the traditions are, how different, food is, how different the languages are. If you take Hindi and Tamil, they're not similar at all, like at all. And I think that vastness, that diversity, the amount of different cultures within India, like, people don't understand, I think. So that is the first misconception, is just that general one of people don't know how many languages there are there. People don't know how diverse things like food are, or rural area versus metro city, like the difference in like those types of lifestyles. So just, yeah, all of that. I'm going into some of these in more detail, that's why I'm just leaving this one quite broad, but that is the first misconception, is people assume that Hindi is the only language in India, or that Hindu is the only religion. I've had people be shocked that that there's Christians in India. Like, people are just like, what? Like, I never would have thought that. So yeah, I think that's a big one, is just not understanding the diversity of India. Definitely is one that foreigners tend to have. The second one, actually, I feel like I can relate to based on my own upbringing, and this is that the misconception that India is an insanely underdeveloped country with mostly poverty, predominantly slums and poverty. That is what is portrayed in the media in the West. And I was just thinking about this for this video, and I realized that I probably did have that preconceived notion as well, because I mentioned in one of my other videos, but basically when I was in like high school equivalent, a few select people had the opportunity to fundraise, and then they would use that money to travel to Kolkata and work with underprivileged children in a slum and, like, help them. So there was this opportunity, and I remember being in that hall, and they were doing like a slideshow about Kolkata slums and this school that you would be going to help, and that was like probably one of my first introductions to India. So one of my first, memories of anything related to India was that, where, you know, we're being shown all these children in really awful circumstances and slums, and, you know, that they need our help basically. And I hadn't really thought before, like, did I have any preconceived notions? But that is a preconceived notion that, you know, oh, well, this is what India's like, based on that, you know. And obviously the teachers didn't say anything else about India as a country. It was about this one thing. So yeah, my judgment was steered towards, oh, well, that's what India is like, you know. And I think that's true for a lot of Westerners, a lot of foreigners, particularly Westerners, who either haven't been to India or before they went to India have this idea to expect there to be more poverty. And I think that was definitely my perception. The very first time I visited India, I remember being surprised how, like, you know, like Delhi was the first place I went to, and like how modern, like so many parts of it are so modern and so like not at all what maybe I had expected. Again, like this is so different for everyone, because I know of someone else who went to India and she had said that she thought it was like really like shocking and eye-opening, the poverty on the streets and, you know, the homelessness and children begging and things like that. And so it's like, it's mad how two people can have such different perceptions about it. But that's what I mean, is I think it's based on what you've seen on the media, your own perception of it, what you've been told about it. So it's just different for everyone. But I think that's a general one, is people do assume India is a lot more underdeveloped than it actually is. I don't know if you know Bald and Bankrupt, that travel YouTuber. He has come out with a video recently, basically. So he started off doing his videos basically in India and, you know, always praising India, loved the people, loved the culture. He did so many videos like traveling around India and showcasing what India's like. And he went back there just recently after years of never being there. And he basically just shit on India, basically saying how, you know, in all those years it hasn't developed anymore and it's an awful place basically. And whereas I think my experience was kind of different, I expected it to be even more underdeveloped than it is. So I think for me it was more of a pleasant surprise, like, oh, like this isn't, you know, necessarily what I thought. And again, it just depends on what kind of places you go to in India, whether you're going to like cities, rural areas, what kind of places you're going to, which part of the country you're going to. Like, it's all so diverse that there's no one answer. But I think that's 100% one of the biggest misconceptions is, and obviously it's not a misconception because there is extreme poverty in India also, like that obviously exists too, 100%. My coffee is really on me. And obviously this isn't like a misconception because there is poverty in India. So it's not, by misconception, I'm talking about a scale. I'm not talking about like it's not true at all. But yeah, I think my experience has just been, you know, even I've said this before, but in where I live in Pune, like just some places, like you see the sheer wealth of people having these amazing homes, you know, really fancy, expensive cars. You know, I think that there's such extreme scales. You have extreme poverty, you have extreme wealth. Look at the Ambani family as an example, do you know what I mean? And I think that that's not really showcased that much. It's usually showing in Western media poverty. You know, we have ads on our TVs of donate to this charity to help, you know, these children in India, and that's our perception because it's like, oh, you know, we've been told our whole life like they need kind of our support, they need our money, they need help. So it's like you have that view that, well, India's a poor country. This brings me on to the next point, which is that India has the 5th highest GDP rank in the world. Yes, you heard right. Indians obviously already know this. I hope it's still 5th. I could be higher than 5th now, but I'm not sure. I should look that up. Yes, it looks to still be correct. So it has the 5th highest GDP in the world, and that says a lot, you know. I mean, that's what I mean, is there's a perception that India is this really underdeveloped country, but it has the 5th highest economy in the world. So this is what I mean, it's such a scale, but the perception from here is leaning like one way only. And yeah, it's not true. It's not true only, I should say. Sorry, I'm getting so cozy now in my little chair. Yes, I have pajamas on. Okay, so speaking of the economy, this brings me on to the next point, which is how advanced systems are in India. Guys, if only foreigners knew, you can get groceries delivered to your house in 5-10 minutes. Instant grocery delivery. You can return parcels. Like if you buy something online and you don't like it and you want to return it, the next day or same day? No, probably the next day. Someone will come and collect that and post it back for you. Like you don't need to go here in Ireland. You have to go to the post office every time you want to like return something or post it back. There's all of these things that are so advanced. UPI, you know, is in India, everyone's paying with like QR codes and scanners, and like that's so advanced in comparison to here. Like even on our buses here, we still have to use card, like a travel card, not even our bank card. So there's so many things like this that our India is 10 million times ahead. That it's just again, it's just stuff that foreigners don't see or know about. Like where would we find out that from unless you had been there, you know, or no Indians. Again, just such a misconception about the extent of the like underdevelopment of India, because there's all of this stuff that is so advanced that hasn't reached us yet in the West. And this next point is the one of arranged marriages. From what I've heard and seen, the Westerners' perception of arranged marriages is that it's forced, that it's unconsensual, blah, 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 that it's non-consensual, that it's forced, that the family just decide and the child has to just, well, you know, adult, but, you know, the son or daughter has to just do that without choice, without say. And again, this is not true, like, across the board, like, especially nowadays. Yeah, I think further back in India's time in history, you know, marriage was more of the parents and family's choice, and it's much less common nowadays for that to happen. For majority of people now, it's their choice. It's not being decided by other people. Yes, the family is still going to have their opinion, and that could be you know, that they're for it or not for it, or but it's really not like that, like from what I've seen anymore. It's definitely changed, you know. And even in the case of, let's say, the parents have selected someone, an option for you to marry, you have the option to meet them. You know, it's not just like you just show up and it's the first time you're seeing them. That's another misconception that foreigners have had, is like, oh, an arranged marriage, you've never seen them before. It's basically like Love is Blind, you know, now. Those shows were Married at First Sight, where you just meet someone without ever having marry someone without ever having met them. Like, it's not like that anymore. And even back then, it wasn't necessarily like that for every family. Every family is so different, and every place in India is so different. Like, it differs so much. But that's definitely a misconception, that arranged marriages are like forced marriages, and it's not the case at all. More often than not nowadays, the son or daughter has the option to reject that person and say no, choose someone else for me. Or, you know, love marriage obviously is, you know, very, very common nowadays in India. People are choosing themselves and finding their own partners. Culturally, this is obviously very different. Like here in the West, we don't necessarily need the approval of like parents or family on the person that we want to be with. Obviously, that is a cultural difference between India and Western countries. It's the Western perspective of India is still one that's very like back in time, you know, like 50 years ago. And it's not only like that now, I'll say, because I'm sure in some families, maybe some people are still being forced to marry someone because they've no choice or say. But I mean, it's becoming like very different nowadays, and it's not the norm. So this next one is the perception that in India not many people speak English. I think that this one is, even for me, I think probably when I think about it, like when I first went to India, I do think more people spoke English than I had expected. But you can 100% get around in India without speaking any of the languages. With English, I think you could get around pretty fine. So many people nowadays do speak English. A lot of people are learning it. You know, it's mandatory to learn in schools now. Again, depending on like what kind of school you're going to and everything. But so yeah, that's one that I've come across before, is people kind of being surprised maybe about the level of English, you know, because that's another thing, is people have always said to me as well, like, oh, like, sure, you know, obviously if you see my other videos, like I have spent quite a bit of time like looking how I could work in India, like to stay there and be with my partner. And people always suggest that, you know, why don't you teach English? Because I have a TEFL accreditation to teach English as a foreign language. But yeah, people don't really know that. So people say that to me all the time, like, why don't you teach English like there? And I'm like, Yeah, but that's actually more difficult to get a job in that than you'd think, because why would they hire me when they have billions, millions of Indians who can speak perfect English and teach it? So, yeah, it's definitely a bit of a misconception that I've come across too. And this next one, this one's not a misconception. I'm not going to say it's a misconception because maybe that's a misconception in itself. Sorry, I don't know. But this one is that India is not safe for, I'm going to say for people in general. Obviously, particularly women is the one that always comes up and, is evidence of same. But this perception that India is not safe as a country to be in or to travel in, it obviously has elements of truth. And that's the thing with all of these misconceptions is, a lot of them have an element of truth. They're not like 100% like false information, but it's the scale, right? It's the fact that, and this one is the most common one that comes up around me of is people saying like, oh, but like, do you feel safe there? Like, is that safe for women? I've heard so much from people around me saying, oh, but like women aren't treated well in India. So, it's not safe. It's not good. It's, that's awful. And it is awful. But again, it's such a, I'm trying to like word it right, to say it right. But the first thing is that, yes, in comparison to, say, my country, is India still more of a patriarchal country in comparison? 100%. So yeah, like that's not wrong, but at the same time, is it in the way that say these people that I've spoken to around me are thinking? Every family is so different. You of course have the extremes. You have 100% there are women being abused in their home and probably having like no say or no control, or in really awful situations, abusive situations, and men too. I'm sure men too. There's been that case of, I don't remember his name, sorry, but there was recently in India, a man committed suicide. He was being harassed by his wife and blackmailed by all of her family, and awful things. So it's happening in both ways. But like I said, it's just so, like, you can't blanket any of these statements because it's so different in every house. There's other households then that it's the opposite. Like, women are running the households. They have all of the say. They, especially nowadays in metro cities in India, like majority of women are working, my age, and, the upcoming generations will all be like working women, like women want to work. That's accepted and that's like encouraged now. I mean, even in the context of arranged marriages now, many grooms will like, or their families will prefer that the woman is a working woman and not just going to be a housewife. That's literally, for so many a requirement now in the arranged marriage, that they want a wife that works and has her own independence and her own life. So it's, again, in the West we don't see that aspect of it as much. It's kind of just this perception that, maybe Indian households are more abusive and treat women less. And again, not saying that that doesn't happen, that's not true, because it does, but it's dependent on the household, it's dependent on how they've grown up, it's dependent on so many factors that to like make that general statement that women are treated poorly, it's definitely changed a lot, and it's just very nuanced. And it's like if someone said about in my country like a blanket statement, like you can't make a blanket statement because everyone is so different, and people forget just how huge India is, like a population of what, like 1.4 billion. So blanketing statements for that many households, people, different kinds of like growing up differently, it's but of course, like I said, in comparison to the West here, is India developing more slowly in that aspect to reach that level of like equality for men and women? 100%, yes. I'm trying to find the words for all this stuff, but because I want to say, I'm trying not to say anything that's like incorrect or too on one side, because I don't actually have like a particular side. I'm just telling what I've heard and trying to bring in what I know, and yeah, I hope you can understand. And the part about it being unsafe, particularly for women, is again 100% truth in it. We've all, as foreigners, we've all heard stories of, I don't know, can I say that word on YouTube? And assaults and murders, you know, everything. But it's one of the main labels that India gets, is that India is full of, and that India is not safe for traveling in, for women, particularly for solo women especially. And again, it's just, there's so two different sides of the coin that it's hard to, you can't make one blanket statement about it. Like, is India the safest country in the world? Absolutely not. But it's also from the media, because like I said, we only hear those stories, those brutal, like horrific cases. They're the only ones that come to our media. I had no idea until I started like getting into India and Indian culture, like how kind Indian people are as well, and how hospitable they are, and how much they want to help, and how much they'll like stand up for fellow Indians in cases where it's necessary. You don't see any of that, so it's like, it's such extremes. And one example, because recently, maybe if you're from Goa you might know of this, but there was a murder of a Irish woman. Actually, her name is Danielle, and she was in Goa traveling. She had befriended a local Goan man, and yeah, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of what happened, but she was murdered. That came up only just recently on our news here, because only now, after like 8 years or something, that man was actually convicted and sentenced after such a long time, which, you know, in of itself is like disgraceful, taking 8 years to serve justice. But I was on Reddit in this thread. So this news article came up in the Ireland Reddit thread, and I was reading through it, obviously, and obviously it's something that I resonate with, because, you know, I'm Irish and I love India, and I'm in India too, and I have an Indian partner, and all of that stuff kind of really resonates. But then it's so tragic as well what happened to her. And so I was reading through the comments, and, you know, it's Irish people predominantly commenting in this thread, obviously, and everyone is just generalizing, like in the comments of like, oh well, of course, like it's India, what else would we expect? And, you know, these comments that are just very much, you can tell their own like preconceived notions of everything only that we see in the media about this stuff happening. Is they've concluded, well, India is this way and Indian people are like this. It's frustrating. It's also difficult in those instances where something really awful and tragic has happened. And of course, there's so much within Indian society in that sense that needs to change. And, you know, I don't have the answers, but yeah, that's a whole other discussion. But there is so much there in terms of like why those instances happen there. And then on the other side of the coin, it's like, it's kind of mad, because I mean, just in the past few months here in Ireland, every week there's been an instance of either sexual assault or rape or murder or, you know, assault of some sort. And a lot of them are domestic and towards women. It's easy to just be like, oh, well, we hear about this stuff in India, but our country's not like that. But it's happening here too. No country is rid of any of these things. It's happening within all of our societies, whether it's voiced or whether we know about it or not, or whether we're just don't take notice of it because it's our own country, or it's easier to take the judgments from another country that we have already these other judgments on. So it's so prime example of, from my country at the moment, is Conor McGregor. I mean, everyone knows of Conor McGregor, but that like ignorance bothers me. You know, people being ignorant towards another, blanket stating like such things on, and tagging them to a particular like group of people or country of such scale is it's kind of mad, because it's literally happening in our own news. I've just seen so much of this stuff happening in the past couple of months in my own country. So it's this is all very much labeled in the misconceptionness. Again, they're not misconceptions, because this stuff is happening, but people are just very quick to judge outside of their own race, country, culture. And I've chosen a really like difficult topic to discuss, because I don't know how to word what I'm trying to say like correctly. There is 100% a lack of education, a lack of sexual education in India. This is not defending that whatsoever. Like, it should not be happening anywhere in the world, but I'm just making a point to say that unfortunately it does happen. And it's happening in extremely developed countries such as mine Also, I don't know, I think that it's, again, it's such a broad thing that like I could talk forever discussing, but that just really struck with me in this thread, like seeing the comments from people. I'm living in India, and I've seen, you know, the other side of the scale, which is you have men treating women with so much respect in many cases, treating elders with so much respect that we can't even comprehend here because we don't do that. And it's just, there's so two sides, and it's so it's just really something that I think cannot be labeled onto a country. Sadly, it has been. I think the media is only fueling, sorry, I don't mean like, obviously, like my national news said this story about Danielle, and of course that should be reported or like shown in the media 100%. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying in the sense of, even now, like, you have so many YouTubers or social media people who travel to India and show the negative side, fueling even more of that. And yeah, they don't owe India anything, or they don't owe people like me or other Indians who like see India differently and see the positives and love so much about it. And, you know, like, they don't owe us anything. If that's their opinion, like, that's their opinion. Everyone's entitled to have it, and who are we to judge what their opinion's right or wrong? I've also seen the frustration from Indians online on these platforms like Instagram and YouTube, where an example is that guy Bald and Bankrupt, and I think one of his fellow YouTuber friends who has just come to India, like, he just put out a video, I think in the last few days, where that man Bald and Bankrupt was in it as well. And the title was something like, I don't know that man, Small Brained American, his name is, YouTube name is. Ironic name. But he has a video just out. Sorry, it was actually 4 months ago. I went back to India. It still sucks. People like this are just frustrating even for me, and I'm not Indian, but it's just like, it's kind of ignorant. I mean, if you've already been to India and you've already decided you don't like it, like, why are you going back there to make videos and content about it that you know are going to get views and get people talking? So it's obviously very contrived. It's very intentional what these people are doing. And I know, you know, ironic because, like, I'm a foreigner and I make content about India, but obviously I'm doing it from a place of, well, I love India and I love showing the goods of India. I barely ever showcasing negatives about India because I don't feel that way, you know. And these people are entitled to make whatever videos they want. They're entitled to say their opinions and, you know, talk about whatever they want. But it's just kind of, to me, it's very small brained, as this guy's name is. It makes me sad because, I don't know, I just wish people could see India through my eyes, or other people, you know, everyone in this world that I have seen online, like foreigners who live in India and love it here. And there was an amazing one recently. I will link the video here if I can do that. Max Chernov is his name, and he does videos interviewing foreigners in India basically that live here. And there's this old woman, she was in her 80s, and she's been living in India the last 30 years, and she was just like, oh, she just said everything exactly what I think and feel. I will link it here. Please go watch it. It's so amazing. And that's why I can just understand the frustration of, you know, if that's, you know, if this is your country and people are just pointing out all the negatives. I mean, there's negative things in every country. Every country has pros and cons. I mean, I get this comment all the time, like, you know, why would you want to live in India when Ireland is so developed? But, you know, we have a housing crisis here. Like, half of us are never going to be able to own homes probably, and, you know, struggle for years before we can own a home and start a family. And people don't know that, you know, and it's the same, like, Indians don't know that about my country more often than not. That's why I get those comments. But yeah, so many misconceptions about many countries and cultures and people in the world. It's obviously not only India either. But yeah, I just love discussing this kind of stuff. It's really fascinating for me, and it's good to have conversations about it, the other end of the spectrum as well, because, like I said, these misconceptions are there. They're apparent on social media. They are apparent in people like these videos where you see foreigners' thoughts on them. And I don't have the answers on what can be done to change it, other than from my end. That's why I create content about India and things that I love about India. predominantly always positive things. You know, I can't wait to go back to India and continue to show more. I know most of my audience is Indian anyway, but even if like one foreigner clicks on these types of videos and sees, oh, like that's what India's like. Oh, I didn't think that, or I didn't know that. Like, even that's cool to me, you know, to think that you might give someone else a different perspective. And that's why I love making these videos. And yeah, I just can't wait to get back to India and continue showcasing my life there and how much I love it there. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If it was interesting for you, please do like and subscribe. If you want to see more similar discussions, I have so many more up my sleeve. So many other things I would love to discuss in detail. Even I could talk a whole video on just each of those things alone. Do let me know in the comments as well your thoughts on anything that has been mentioned, and we can create a discussion there. I'm all up for other perspectives, and again, this is not to blame foreigners for having these misconceptions, because they do stem from information that we are given here, and usually the only information we are given about India is the negatives. So again, it's not to blame either anyone for having preconceived notions or misconceptions or these extreme, like, unbalanced biases. It's normal, and it's the same for every country. Like I said, Indians have it about my country too. And yeah, I just hope that this was an interesting video for you guys to watch, and please do like and subscribe. And yeah, I know I just said that, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.